Well, hello, this is Ed Ross. We're in Fact TV in Bellows Falls, and we have an interview with two special people. Shaison Joseph from India and Miss Hanson from NGGE. Tracy, they're educators, filmmakers, and let me hear about. Go ahead, Shaison.
Oh yeah, I'm Shaison from Mumbai, India, and right now I am working on a documentary film on Matrix of a Learner, which is the philosophy of Tracy Hanson. So, can you
What is the
explain
matrix of
what
a
is a
learner?
matrix of learner?
The matrix of a learner allows us to have things come from within out
Okay.
rather than everything being forced inside us from outside. And it's a picture, a visual that encompasses three parts, one being the very center, and that's the learner, which is a person or an organization or a company or a club. It can be a community, it can be a nation. And they're the ones that define exactly what they are and what their goals are. And then using the 5 resources that come out of that center is those resources that help them achieve that.
No, right.
And they kind of happen as we interact with our environment and grow, our resources grow. So we start with the family and the parents, or however, whatever situation we were brought up in, into then the peers that we meet, and then the educators that come into our life, our community, we become more involved in our community in small and bigger parts, and then as global citizens and being able to interact globally. And throughout those resources is the learning cycle. And that learning cycle in the matrix doesn't start without asking questions. And questions are really a huge factor to the matrix, because I don't believe that you can really learn things unless the things you want to learn about. So you're asking questions, and that's the first part of the cycle. Finding the answers to those questions using the resources, that's the second part of the cycle, which of course means more questions. But then going into using the knowledge to create something and then give it back to your environment or that community. And the fifth piece, which we spiral through continuously as we grow and get better, is mastery. In the school systems, master is really what they focus on, sort of learn what it is we need to master on a test. But in the matrix, it's really not. It's about what can you do with the knowledge that you've gained to be able to give back to others to make them more successful too.
You're right.
Well, this sounds, amazing. Sounds to me like quite different from what we have in education now, because our schools are providing answers. Like when I went to school, you couldn't ask any questions. We just got fed the answers. So you're talking about individuals asking questions and growing along their own personality and what they want to do, and provide the resources for them.
Right, making their choices too. I mean, even youngsters know about things that fascinate them and that they have questions about, and we just need to start listening to them, watching them, following them, and then mentoring them to find their own answers. Well, that's one of the things I ask parents often is, have you got a 3-year-old? And many will say, oh yes. Do they ask questions? All the time. And so what happens to, and why do they stop asking questions? Or, in reverse, why do you think they continue to come and ask the same question all the time?
Oh, yeah.
Well, if they came and asked you a question, parents give them the answer because that means, okay, now they're, But if you don't give them the answer but start asking them questions back and getting them to start being curious about what that answer is and how maybe they can solve that themselves, then your job is to mentor them as a resource and help them come back to you and say, this is the answer. Now the answers are coming from inside and out. They aren't being forced on them. Okay. And so by the time they get into the first grade, everything is very structured, very scripted. You do this at this time, you do this at this time. If you're this old, this is what you do. And so there isn't time. And teachers don't like to be questioned. Teachers don't like to be questioned
What a
because
tragedy
they don't
that
have
is.
time. You know, they're too scripted. These are the things they have to do, and they don't use a tenth of the resources
Right.
that are available. But you know, and it's not just about education and learning in the schools. It really is applicable to all walks of life, which is why, although it started for education, it really has evolved through its use around the world as being a philosophy for life.
Wonderful. And I think I know the answer to this question, but I think you're probably quite aware that many psychologists over a period of time have shown, like hundreds of tests, the more you teach the rote, the more you teach memorization, the more you do all that, your creativity just goes down
Goes
the
down.
tube.
Goes down.
You would agree with that?
Of course,
That's
of course.
true,
You know, what drives our learning is our curiosity. And that's the asking of the questions. And if that's driven out of us and we're no longer curious, then we're pretty much exactly the way they want us to be, like little robots following what it is they want us to know. But
Yes.
given that they keep us in those blocks, then how do we develop the creativity and the imagination and the problem solving that's necessary for us to get outside the box and solve the problems that are facing us?
And the metrics is going to show us how to do that.
The
So
metrics, yes, metrics is guiding communities to do that,
Okay.
guiding, working with governments to
I
do
don't know how
that.
much time we have left at this shift to Scheisen. I wonder, how do you feel about her philosophy of education? You must like it, and evidently you're making a documentary film about the Matrix and about Tracy. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah,
and
I
how
have
you
been.
met her and how
Yeah,
you
I
got
have
together?
been. I have been. Okay, let me start with how I met her.
Sure.
You know, it was in 2014 when we had the Nepal earthquake. So
Oh, yes.
a part of that, you know, I have been shooting over there. Then I happened to meet her, and you know, that's where we get in touch with. And when I came to know that she has got a philosophy, I was very curious, especially when it was very connected with the education of today's system or thinking system. So I asked her what it's all about. Then she explained the theory. She explained the philosophy to me. Then I felt very interesting. I told her that as from the point of view of a filmmaker, I'm happy to make a film on it, a documentary.
About
So-
education. Now, that's a very interesting thing to make
You're
a
right.
documentary
Yeah,
about
right.
education.
Yeah.
There aren't a lot of documentaries about the educational system, are there?
Not many, not many. So I decided to follow her, to capture her movements and her philosophy in various countries, starting from United States to Uganda, Kenya, India, Nepal. So we captured all these images and we put together, and now we are planning. It's almost ready. The film is almost ready.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. Well, looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, right.
Now, what have you been in the States for a while? You're going back to India soon. And what have you been doing here
Yeah,
in terms and you've been to the States before? And
Yeah, I have done a couple of films here. You know, the last my film was Healing Hands. Okay, here in the United States.
what's that about?
It's about the woman coming back to life after the death experience, and she gets some kind of extra energy to heal the people, and that was her story. And prior to that, we have done in Puerto Rico, in
In the what?
island,
In the-
in Puerto Rico island, an
Puerto
American
Rico.
island.
Oh,
Puerto
Puerto
Rico.
Rico.
Puerto Rico is an American island, which is situated on the western part of it.
No, I know where Puerto Rico is.
Yeah.
But most Americans, just a side note,
Yeah, right.
you know, most Americans don't know that Puerto Ricans are American
Even
citizens.
I had the difficulty when I went for taking the visa to Puerto Rico. The guy who was sitting over there said, I need to check whether the Puerto Rico is part of America or not.
Oh
No.
my gosh.
So,
I need to
so
check.
that was the
Most of us think of Puerto Rico as another colony. We don't really.
Exactly.
But anyway, never.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have done a film called Ecosexuality. That means
Says what?
Ecosexuality.
Ecosexual.
Ecosexuality.
Echo.
Yeah.
Like
Sexuality.
ecology.
Oh, yeah, correct.
Sexuality.
Sexuality.
Well, this sounds like an interesting film.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
It's about how you can marry or how you can love a tree, a river, a sea, whatever in the nature.
Oh,
When you get married to the tree, automatically you preserve the tree. You know, you look after the tree. So imagine that everyone gets married to one or the other thing on earth. So we preserve the nature. That's all content. So which won an international American Independent Film Award in 2014.
no,
Yeah,
2014.
14. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. So you made how many films have you made then? now?
So
This is
far,
gonna be-
I have made 35 films.
Whoa.
And this is my last film, and
Your
I'm
last?
just-
What do you
No,
mean
no,
last?
not
I mean
his
to say,
last film, but
I mean
The most recent.
the
No.
recent.
Yeah, well, I hope it's not your last.
Yeah.
because we got to change the educational
Yeah,
system.
right.
Well,
We
no,
got a
you
lot
know,
of work to do.
Yeah, and you're not going to change the educational system unless you begin to change the pieces that are all involved, those resources. And you got to start with the family and the parents, and begin to ask them the questions like, what is the purpose of having your child, and what is it that you expect your child to be in the future, and all these kinds of, because they have to realize that that's not their job as a parent. You know, and then you have to start working with the peers, you know, and have the peers begin to understand that there's an interdependency upon each other for success. You know, and if that learner who's in the center is successful, the peers are going to be successful too. And they begin to start changing the picture of the responsibility and how they work together with each other. The same with educators. We need to get the classroom focused. I must do things exactly this way, or it can be a club or a company. It depends on what's in the center. But each one of those pieces has to be addressed both individually and unified interactively through whatever that is that they're working towards.
And how are you financing this? This is one of the things I've been thinking about, and I know you have too, is the privatization of education in the United States. And I thought, you know, we're a first world country, you know, the rich always get the best education. But Modi is doing the same thing in India.
Right.
The same thing is happening in Kenya, even in so-called, I hate those terms, third world countries.
Yeah.
There's this economic grip. The more money you have, the better educated you're going to be.
You're right.
The higher up you're going to go on the ladder. How
Yeah.
is have you thought about how the matrix can kind of
Reverse that.
yes, yes.
The Matrix is reversing that. Certainly it's reversing that in Uganda. And because people are beginning to realize that it doesn't take a lot of money to get the learning and the knowledge that you need. You just have to have access and be a global citizen, and the mentoring of those people to help you achieve your goals. And that is not going out and spending all these monies on books and, you know, more money.
Well, we're pretty much doing away with books.
No, you haven't. We've mentored two very successful communities, one in Uganda and one in Kenya.
Yeah.
Both from scratch, who were actually three, but who were able to take the information and use what it is that they got from the work that I did with them on the Matrix, to use that information to move themselves further towards achieving their goals.
Okay, let's get down to the nitty gritty in the sense, you know, the devil's in the details, because this all sounds really good. A little vague, a little philosophical. So, how is your classroom different from the one across the street?
Well, first of all, it's not my classroom.
Well, the
And-
classroom
and-
that
and
you
it
would
doesn't-
imagine.
and it
How
doesn't-
would you imagine a classroom? That
I imagine the classroom is here. I imagine the classroom is out in the community. I imagine the classroom is learning in class about how to do certain things, and then the rest of the class is outside doing it. I imagine class is about hands-on, experiential understanding and doing it.
if I
That's
come into
what it
your
should
class,
be.
will there be a teacher there? Computers? What will be there? How will you start the day? I mean, give me some details. Give me
but
some
you're asking
details.
for a detail for
Your
I mean,
idealized classroom.
That doesn't work that way. Every country and every community and every learners, they have different objectives and different goals. And depending upon what that centerpiece is, really is what determines what that outside piece looks like. So you're saying, okay, right here and now, how would I set up a classroom and what would it look like? Well, I guess if I go first into the community, I find out from the community what it is that their goals are and how they define themselves and what they see for themselves in the future. And I would work with the children that are there for exactly the same thing to find out what it is. And then we work together with the resources to develop that.
So you have
program
desks
together.
and computers, or
Well,
computers,
there
or
can be
teacher?
some desks there. There can be some
Will you have computers?
there. Who's a teacher? Every learner has knowledge to share back. Who's a teacher?
That's what I'm asking.
You're a teacher? Okay. Shyson's a teacher? The people who run the Wayfair Center down there
Well,
are
the
teachers?
whole world's a
That's just
teacher
ex-
and a stage.
And that's just the point. We limit ourselves to only getting that information, which is what the teachers in the school are programmed with, rather than being able to get firsthand learning knowledge from around us and from the people who are doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing with understanding, not from textbooks or from news videos, what the people are like in the third world country and what their needs are, or what it's like to live through an earthquake. You have the opportunity to speak to experience, and to understand those things from those people themselves. They can become the educators, okay? And that in turn helps those people who are learning about that make choices. Do I want, can I help? And that's what happened in Kenya with Michael Suskill's class in Pennsylvania, creating and designing a bridge for Livingstone's kids in Kenya, and giving them the information and the knowledge to do that. They did it, and they now have access to school because of it. But it's because they learned about each other. They realized that there were problems, and that one group had the ability and knowledge to gain, to share, and give it back to another group, which then took that knowledge and shared and gained and gave it back to the whole
How
community.
did Michael communicate that to the school?
Oh,
to-
through Skype. Through Skype.
Through Skype.
Yeah,
Right.
we helped make sure and in help. And see, that's really, the matrix is the matrix, and it's a philosophy, and it works. But because of technology is still creating a gap. So NGGE's function really is to be able to get the computers and the technology to the communities necessary to allow them to boost up that last step of being able to be global citizens. Because that opens up the world of knowledge to them. And then they really can move forward with the plans.
Mm-hmm. No, the governments you've been in, the countries you've been in, I meant, they have certain countries have more control over the internet, that sort of thing. Do you get the internet? I mean, so first of all, you got to have electricity, then you have commuters, and then you're in the slums, so you need money. And how does the government feeling about this? Are you getting any government help? And how is your internet connection?
Well, it's kind of interesting because in Uganda, the Commissioner of Education and whatever is working with us and interested in this whole philosophy and changing the education pathway that they're in now.
Mm-hmm.
And the leader of Uganda has turned around and limited internet access. So now it was
To
sort
whom?
of create
Limited to
Uganda
the other
people.
party, his
To-
opposition, a
Yeah.
political party?
Well, or to the people of. So now we have this kind of education is saying, and they're saying, and let's face it, it doesn't matter what country you're in. The one thing that's keeping everything down from really making improvements are the governments and the politics.
Yes.
And so the only way we're going to be able to change those things is by changing these things down here.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And
How is
then-
it going in Kenya?
And Kenya's going very well. I
Is
mean,
it
yeah.
Cameroons?
Cameroons, we lost a little track with over the last few months, but they are doing awesome, and we're pulling
Coming
back in
back.
with Cameroon. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. And so, I'm pretty sure almost finished, but we're really looking forward to when this gets released and sharing it with
Yeah.
everybody and distributing it to the.
When's going to be the grand opening?
The grand opening within a month or
No,
40
not here
days
in
time.
Bellows Falls. No,
Yeah, we'll
you'll,
do
you'll
that.
have to send us a copy.
Of course, we will do
course.
it. You know, we have to
Of
do
course.
it because it's originated here. So
Oh,
people need to show at least a kind of respect towards this
It's going to come to
philosophy.
Fact TV.
philosophy. So
So when it comes out, you come here to Fact TV, and you'll get to see the documentary on the Matrix of a Learner.
okay. How are we doing on time? Can you
I
hear
think
us?
he's just about good.
We're good.
Okay, 2 minutes. Okay.
Okay, you got 1 minute. You got one more minute. Get down, drill down. What's
yeah. So
No,
so
I-
I hope that within 30 or 40 days time we will be able to complete the film and present to the world and say what the philosophy is all about in a visual form, so that the people get attracted to watch it. And some of the things in philosophy or in the theory, when you explain it with the visuals, people
with the what?
With the
vi-
visuals.
the
Oh, the
visuals,
visual.
the videos
Yeah.
or the films, then everyone get to know much better,
Yeah,
easier.
wonderful. Okay.
Yeah, so we hope for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Tracy? I
Well,
know,
I
I
just-
know
I
you're
just
going to have a
wanna-
hard time summarizing
No,
this
I
in
just
1 minute,
wanna-
but go for it.
I just want to thank Fact TV
Oh,
and
yeah.
the people here for letting us come, and the great people in Ackworth. There weren't lots, but there were hardy ones that made it to a horrendous thunderstorm to do a preview of the documentary. The feedback has been invaluable,
Oh, wonderful.
and so
Oh,
I thank
wonderful.
my community and also those people
You're
who
right.
who spoke from here in the film. There were a number of people from the area that
wonderful.
that are in the documentary. So thank
All
you
right.
so much.
Thank you.
We're wrapping it up.
You're right.